of Ash and Flo. This is Unbillable Hours, a podcast about professional services marketing. Stick around to listen to our insights, tips, and best practices to improve your firm's marketing and even your career.
So welcome to this new episode of Unbillable Hours. Everyone, Ash. With us here today is Steffen Hedebrandt. He's the co-founder at Dream Data IO, which I think, Steffen, you can correct me, is a platform that helps B2B marketers with linking their spends and their activities to revenue, right? So you're in the attribution business, is that correct?
That's pretty exact, yeah.
Nice. So we brought you on because, just talking for myself personally here, I don't know too much about attribution, how it's done well. I know why it's important, and I know that there's lots of technology out there that can do great things these days, but it's very interesting for me to really understand the full picture. So maybe you could kick us off and just speak about how what your perspective on marketing is from an attribution angle, and then where do you come in, or how do you what's attribution's role, or a platform of Dream Data's role in B2B marketing today?
Yeah, I can try to start out kind of. I come from a kind of a thinking around marketing that you should do marketing to drive more pipeline to produce revenue. So I want to do marketing activities where I know that there's if you do A, B, then you get C. I want to impact revenue. I want to impact pipeline. I want to grow the business. So I'm not so good at activities that falls outside of, I think of that category. And in this relation, the reason why attribution is an interesting topic is that at least essentially for me, attribution means that you are trying to understand how you acquired a new customer. What were the steps along the way that actually gave you that you have proof happened? Because if you know kind of how you're acquiring your customers, then it's also likely that you can kind of repeat what worked and stop what doesn't work. So it's kind of an effort to find kind of the cheat codes for the computer game. So you can go in and repeat them. Now, you're never gonna, I think this is important to get out there right away. You're never gonna find anybody who's gonna tell you 100% of what took place. It's just never gonna happen. You cannot go into the brain, you cannot go into the emotions, feelings, etc. of every person and find out what really made the difference. So what you should think about is kind of attribution as kind of a statistical discipline, where you're trying to go from knowing 10 or 20% of what's going on to knowing 50, 60 or 70% instead.
All right. Yeah.
Because it's going to help you when you make decisions, hopefully make decisions that correlates with making more revenue. And that's the kind of decisions that I find the business decisions I want to be making. So I think that's why I find attribution such an interesting discipline, is that you should be able to identify stuff that you're able to repeat. And if you repeat those activities, you actually do something really valuable for your business.
And I think that's a very important point right there, is to say that's the level of improvement you're lacking at. You should not look at your dashboard and take it as that's the truth or that's gospel, which
I think I heard somebody say there's nothing as dangerous as pretty dashboards.
Oh yeah, I think we can all agree on that one.
Yeah, and I think that leads to me in attribution, there's kind of three different industries that the function is different. So we see kind of there's a B2C dimension, which is kind of me buying a pair of running shoes and trying to understand, did I come from mobile the first time, and did I then check out in the web shop on my phone or on my computer afterwards? And then there's all this app space where you kind of do activities, and then you need the consumer to go within the app store and do something. And then there's the last bucket, which is the bucket we feel that Dream Data is in, that's the account-based attribution, trying to understand B2B. Yeah. So when a B2B company is going from researching to doing talks with your company all the way to closed one, despite it taking 3, 6, 12 months or something like that.
Yeah. And that's also where, and this leads to my next question is, this stuff is fairly complex, right? Because the business is so complex. So I might, if I'm a buyer, I might take a couple of actions online, which you can track, right? But that doesn't mean I then sort of click add to cart, right, and check out the $25 million consulting contract. But there's a lot of stuff that goes in between. So can you elaborate a little bit on how does it even work? How do you guys even get into, I think it's called multi-touch attribution, right? You track a number of activities over time and then shed some light on what's happening there, right?
Yeah, so basically what we do on behalf of our customers is that we take every digital touch that is identified, and then we sort it by the account that it belongs to. So that means that if there's 3, 4, 5 people involved in the deal, we'll take all the touches that they produce anywhere and put it into a timeline. And we particularly at Dream Data talk about revenue attribution as opposed to marketing attribution. And the reason why we do that is that kind of we know that you don't win that, like, as you said, $20 million consultancy contract from a Facebook ad or like a Google search ad or something like that. We want to take any digital touch that is produced anywhere. So that's also like customer success, it's salespeople, it's meetings held, it's calls made, etc., and just map into one long timeline. So essentially any digital reflection we want to put into the timeline of the account. So step one here is really get all the data available into the customer journey. Then you can do the opinionated thing afterwards of applying an attribution model and saying, this is probably the important touch, or this is the important touch. Yeah. So you can see there's definitely you can say, like in a broader term, a digitalization effort that needs to go into a company who wants to do attribution as well. Yeah. Because if your activities leaves no digital trace, if they leave no data, how are you then going to do your analysis of what's working? So I can give a few simple examples of this. If your salespeople are just, cowboys with their phone and they're just like clicking the phone numbers and hitting dial, then that leaves absolutely no trace of things actually happening. Yeah. So you probably want to push them into like a calling software that leaves a trace every time they call somebody up. You know which account did the call go to, which person at the account did it go to, how long did it last, and so forth. If you do all your customer success from just, a Gmail inbox, you probably want to put that inside of a customer success software like Zendesk or Intercom or something else. So like you have to look through all your company activities and say, are we actually producing any data trace after this? If the answer is no, there's a long way for having the proof for attribution. I generally say there's 2 things you need to do if you want to be data driven. The first thing is start by having a narrative of why you're doing what you're doing. Why is this project leading us towards more revenue? I think that's the first thing, because then there you can apply your gut feeling on why this is important. Secondly, then you need to bring data that proves that it's either working or not working. Because then okay, we thought this was a good idea and we do it because this and this and this. Now we have some data. Is the benchmark improving or is it declining? Should we do more or less of it?
Yeah. Which, by the way, that if I may interrupt, that's something we sometimes see, or I have seen that happens in I can't speak for all of B2B because I'm a one-trick pony, but I've seen this happen in professional services effort, especially if there is more, if it's a bigger project. Sometimes people start out with a certain hypothesis, and then it magically gets changed during the process to still justify the project. I don't know if that. So I'm just saying this to reinforce the point, because what you said here was have a hypothesis, right, and stick with it, and then do collect the data, and then just be honest with yourself, right?
Yeah.
Given the data, did we meet whatever the hypothetical target was, and not I don't know, switch from this is going to be a lead generating sales effort to no, this was about brand, right, in the middle of the road.
Okay, stuff like that's probably not a good idea.
Yeah, and just want to ask another question here, tangential but related. So because this is multi-touch attribution and we're looking at all these various points, one of the key issues that you'll see in a lot of large professional services firms, industrial firms and things is essentially sales and marketing. The funnels are not the best, they're not necessarily the best connected. So you'd have all the sales activities and marketing activities being tracked, but it's very hard to like find the right attribution as to what really caused these kinds of connects. So that requires a little bit of discipline building, right, with the sales professional, so that you can actually you can actually do this part of the job much better. So would you have any advice to both the marketing teams and the sales teams on this element? Because then
getting a joint customer journey view.
Yes.
Yeah. So I also like well, you always have to remember if you're living inside of a little bubble, and I think I definitely do. But essentially what we do for our clients at Dream Data is that we build a data warehouse. Mm-hmm. And in this data warehouse, every touch that touches an account goes in. So marketing will be using some tools, sales others. So no matter where which departments owns the touch, we'll just plot it into the timeline, and then you can have an opinion afterwards on whether was that marketing or was that sales. So I think what companies need to, if they want to pursue this kind of for real data-driven journey, is that every department needs to take responsibility that they leave the digital traces, but then they also need kind of, like in popular terms, this single source of truth, for kind of this one bucket that actually holds all the touches that you have with accounts. Because otherwise you're ending up like producing a lot of siloed data where you might not be utilizing what you know to the most of its ability. So classical thing would be like a salesperson just calling up an account without knowing that marketing actually had 20 touches with them before they participated in webinars, downloaded ebooks, etc. And then the salesperson just says, fuck that, I'm just going to call them and not look at what they did. Or the other way around, that marketing starts shipping generic emails when it's actually quite far down the sales funnel. So it's a little bit about like getting a shared view of what's going on is a very nice first step.
Can I ask though, because you said, okay, you built this data warehouse, so you insert yourself sort of in the middle of all the silos and pull the data, but it can't be as easy as that, right? Can I ask what are some of the issues you guys run into when you start implementing your model? Is there something people could do to make your lives easier? Maybe that's another way of asking the question.
I think it comes down to a little bit to like what I said before, is like if you as an organization don't have like a digital infrastructure in place, a platform like ours doesn't work. So if you don't have a proper CRM set up where you kind of record the accounts that you're talking with, you sync every time you send an email, it goes into that account. Every time you do a call, it goes into that account. Then like we have no chance of doing anything if the organization is not thinking digitally. Then our way of doing it breaks down.
So just to take one step back, here's something like, so for a company to actually start using your services and building this out, what is a good way to approach? Like, what should they have in place besides just a CRM software so that you can actually provide them the best result and, actually do great multi-touch attribution, and tracking and all of that. So what do companies need to at least start with to get to use your skills and platform and everything, and then take the bigger step into insights and stuff?
I think we're moving into like an era of first party data, which means you as a company needs to produce and store all your own data, which means that you objectively can have like access to historical data about what's going on. But people don't think about nowadays is like Google Analytics, for example, which is the most popular web analytics tool in the world. Companies actually don't sit on the data themselves. It's Google who owns that. So, and Google will start sampling the data. I believe it's after, this might not be true, but I think it's after 180 days. So when it exceeds a certain volume, it stops actually storing all the data. And this is just like one example of if you need to start tracking your own website first party. So you store all the visitors there, all the actions that they do. Where did the visitors come from? Which ebooks did they download? Who booked the demo? Which account do they belong to? And I think to become really, like, if you want to go down this road, you need to kind of think of your website as the focal point of most of your activities. It kind of becomes the fishing boat of your activities, because
It's got to be the one conversion point, right? Everything I do pretty much has to make sure that people go there and create at least some, as you said, some digital signal, which I can then build.
Yeah, like, so kind of run a campaign, but make sure that they go through that kind of door on the website, because that's what enables you to produce all these tracked users.
Yeah.
So I think there's it's shifting away from like not using the website as important to being actually, you want to put as many people through the website as possible.
So tangential and related to this, something I've experienced in certain firms that I've worked is they collect data, but there's no data hygiene, there's no data cleanliness, and then you have to deal with that. So what recommendations would you have on that? So on those kinds of behaviors, so that we can actually efficiently use services like yours, because when you just get all this junk stuff, it's clearly not going to give the information that you need.
Yeah, you're right. I think this is kind of also where like C-level leadership needs to step in and actually make the company, make the culture understand that this is a path we need to go down, because our competitors are taking advantages of these things. And if we don't get our acts together and produce data and don't like just dump a pile of bad data somewhere, then we're going to lose at some point. So it's a game of competitive advantages, and if you don't like do your best to actually exploit the tech that exists in the context you live in, then at some point you're going to be left at the train station.
Because I think that's I wanted to say this earlier, but I forgot about it. I think that's the business angle for attribution, right? Is that what you can do is you can, like you said, you can spend very efficiently, and what that does for a business is that your cost to acquire a client or a project might be, it's in much better control, and that's actually a winning bet, right? I forget whose quote it is, but there's this weird quote that says whichever company can spend the most to get customers wins, right? Which is another way of saying if your spend per client or per project is below a certain threshold, that's the way you can win. So that's the way how the attribution effort sort of pays back. You can just acquire the work you need to acquire, or maybe it's talent if you're recruiting marketing. You can do that at a lower price point, right? Overall, with much less waste.
And like complementary to that, like kind of you can only spend your euros once.
Yeah.
So kind of you want to spend them as to the most effect that you can get out of them.
Yeah, that's true. That's the flip side of that. Yeah, that's a good one. So I think I took that point away, and I like the point that you made explicitly about it's not just about buying a bunch of tools, right? And it's not only having marketing automation, CRM, and all that stuff, but it's actually using them, right, in a disciplined way to make sure the data is in there and it's reasonably clean, let's say.
I think it's also why there's younger companies are maybe more just born digital, where I really think leadership in more established companies who've been used to doing things in a certain way, the leadership needs to step up and try to change, like do change management kind of thinking. This is also one of the biggest challenges we see, is that they've been used to thinking very singular around stuff. When we then come and introduce numbers that are different from the ones that they're used to looking at, then the management needs to say, like, this is actually more representing the truth than the old way that we did stuff. And then you have the problems of those who have been used to being cheered from producing numbers that looked in a certain way, and then they have to deal with them not being the heroes anymore.
People build entire careers based on that stuff, the old stuff. Actually,
that's why kind of in sales situations, we try to go for people who haven't been too long in the company, because they'll
Interesting.
be less inclined to kind of push back on the numbers we show.
Yeah. But or you find like people championing your approach who are a bit younger, which I think that's becoming more and more of a thing also, right? The decision makers in the corporations are, I don't know, what are they now? In more and more of them are in their 30s, right? So not exactly digital natives, but almost, right? So I think maybe that times in your favor on that end. But you're certainly right. It's professional services still also in that sense maybe a bit conservative. I don't know. If I can, I wanted to. You said you just did some attribution, applied some attribution to LinkedIn recently. I just wanted to hear more about that. I was curious.
Yeah,
if
so
you can share
just
anything.
the context is that kind of as a team before the start of Q2 in Dreamnet, we said, hey, let's try and do an experiment with doing these posts on LinkedIn on kind of that feed, and see if that's a good or bad idea. If we can hit, I think we said 300,000 views in Q2, we'll go for a team dinner.
Nice.
And then throughout Q2, we've kind of been, everybody has been trying to do multiple posts every week, at best doing one per day.
I think
And
I saw your LinkedIn post with the Shield results. Sorry, yeah,
Yes,
I read
exactly.
about it. Okay, cool.
And so kind of there's a ton of stuff we've learned from this. First of all, the new demo calls we get from LinkedIn or from social media organically has 3x'd. And our direct traffic, meaning not necessarily coming from LinkedIn, but there's a pretty strong correlation with people typing in our domain directly, has doubled as well. So there's some very hardcore metrics showing that, because we can do multi-touch, they might, the first time they come is from LinkedIn, and then they might visit the website 2 or 3 times more before they convert, but the first touch would be LinkedIn. But what we're also seeing on a more and now we're in the more gut feeling part of the spectra, is that in almost any demo call nowadays, people mention, I saw that post you wrote on blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And it kind of spirals, because if you have decided upon a very specific ideal customer profile, and you keep adding people within that niche, and your posts are meant for that niche as well, kind of, then the more people you connect with that fits your niche, and the more posts you do, the more well-known you become in that little niche.
Yeah.
And effectively what we can see that it has had a really big impact on real business value, like demo calls and so forth.
Yeah.
So the takeaway from based on what you're saying is that using social, or LinkedIn in this case, to strengthen word of mouth marketing, because it's more about the share of voice through social with word of mouth, as opposed to direct social.
Yeah, I don't know if you can call it word of. Yeah, it's probably also word of mouth, but I think it's also just a matter of, B2B takes tons of impressions before anything happens.
Yeah.
And the LinkedIn post has become a way to expose people a lot with the same message without being too pushy. So example being that normally when we do traditional outbound, we do like a 14-day cadence, and then we stop doing anything. A lot of those guys that did not even click anything for the first 2 weeks, then if they accepted their connect on LinkedIn, then 3 months later, we might seeing them coming in as a demo call without us having done anything else, but just knowing that they've been consistently seeing posts on LinkedIn relevant to what they do.
Which, by the way, I just want to highlight that for people, because thanks for outlining the strategy. It's great, because that's something that always gets, or not always, but it often gets missed, right? Just posting on LinkedIn probably will yield some results, but I always say you should consider an outreach component as well, like adding relevant context to your network, right? Because if you could be posting on LinkedIn every day, if your entire network is just your buddies from high school, or I don't know, right, and not in your niche or not in your industry, a lot of those impressions will actually go to waste. So yeah, that's a key point, is to have these efforts and to ask for these connections, and then the posting becomes like almost an equivalent to email marketing. You just get in front of them, right, multiple times a month because they've given you permission by accepting their request.
It's also like just something that we've started thinking a little bit about lately. It has been the kind of value of business email addresses nowadays. Because we see now that I think people, it's particular, I don't know why, but in marketing, people just change jobs.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say often, but kind of within 1 or 2 years, they're on to the next position quite often.
Yeah. Well, I've said this. I said this, and I've gotten grief on it on LinkedIn. I said, to me, email marketing is almost dead because the idea of sending someone something that's valuable to them in a regular case is not dead at all. It's just the email as a channel. To your point, it creates lots of work. People always say, yeah, it's free, it's my list. Yeah, it is, but then kind of not, because stuff gets outdated really quickly. That's one thing. The other aspect for me is if I actually really sit on people's personal data, I incur all the cost and the risk, at least in Europe, that comes from DSGVO and the compliance stuff, right? So I have to make sure I handle it well, blah, blah. Whereas LinkedIn or paid source or an outreach strategy like you do it, all of that is LinkedIn's problem.
Yeah.
I do have, distribution might be not be as effective, or there might be, deliverability or whatever the phrase there is might not be as great, but then these are issues that exist with email as well. So yeah.
I think there's definitely like but another point is also like if you're in B2C, the consumer don't get rid of that old Yahoo mail or Hotmail that often.
Yeah.
Whereas like if you change job every year, then like the business email dies quite fast.
And even if you deliver it to me, honestly, I find myself at a point where I don't even read the newsletters anymore. I did actually subscribe to because I sort of like them, because stuff just peters out in a way. I don't know.
And it's a miracle if you get an open on the mails you send.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Yeah, but cool, good. That's a nice story. I like that, and I like the stats. The 2x direct access. Do you look at branded search as well, like people searching for dream data and then coming through?
I haven't done the exercise, to be honest, but I would expect also to be some sort of correlation there.
Yeah.
Like,
should be in the same.
With LinkedIn is kind of super top funnel, and you're just touching a lot of irrelevant people as well. But some might go to Google and then type in the branded keyword.
Nice.
So
interesting.
On the email note, just want to make a note because of the work that I do, is that as a channel, it has value only if you look at it as immediate information in really short digests, not the typical thing that we usually send, which probably needs to sit on other channels. It's just something that people know internally within companies, because you do this internally.
Can you repeat it? Can you repeat it? I don't think I caught the idea.
It's that email as a channel should be for immediate consumption content that's really short, that doesn't take you to multiple scrolls, because people internally in companies usually talk about this and they go with the strategy so that anything long-term that you want people to view, read, or anything, they exist somewhere else so that people just find that out. And this is something that increasingly I've seen across companies internally. We don't take this kind of internal discipline externally because we're just collecting emails for CRM purposes.
I'm not saying for me it's kind of, it's only a half-baked thought still, but I think there is something about if they change job all the time, how do you avoid losing the relationship with them when their business email goes old?
Yeah. And then I will agree, email is not dead total. Like, I made that deliberately pointy and stuff. I think there's still lots of value in having email once there is an established relationship. Not just sort of cold or lukewarm lead or anything, but maybe they bought something, or they're sort of in your internal community. It's nice to stay in touch with that. And then we recently had a guest on from a startup who said they even consider this as part of their service. Like, they have a newsletter that goes to their customers, and they make sure that newsletter is actually quite great. And they say, well, that's part of the stuff you buy from us, is you get this kind of insight level, which I thought that was an interesting view on email, which is quite a far way away from the spammy stuff I get in my inbox from so many people.
I think also, like, if you said you did a lot of consultancy stuff.
Yeah.
So I would expect them to be the consultants to be thought leaders within certain areas. So I think I can definitely see that makes sense. What your idea there.
Yeah. But we're sort of nearing the mark. I think we've been going in for half an hour. So I would like to say thank you, Steffen, first and foremost, and sort of take us to wrap. But I also wanted to ask people if they want to find more about, find out more about Dream Data, your work, or just attribution in general. Do you have somewhere on the web where you would point them to, or do you have anything you want to share in terms of your guys' marketing? I mean, this is a marketing podcast.
And yourself,
if you have something you're proud of, just let us know.
Yeah, no, I think connect with me on LinkedIn, and they'll see tons of attribution related discussions. And if they have like any questions, they can just send them to me on LinkedIn. I'll be very happy to reply. Obviously, like if they're B2B and wants attribution, then Dream Data IO. But in general, I'm happy to discuss anything attribution related.
Yeah, and I got a preview of an ebook you guys are. Is that out already, or are you just preparing it?
We actually have to send it to you and some of your feedback. We did some reviews, but it's done. So if you have some show notes, I can send a link to where people can
do that.
get it.
We'll put it, because I read that, and it's I think the title was How to Finally Make Your Digital Ads Work or something like that. And I thought it was I learned quite a ton from it. Not knowing too much about attribution, I thought it was helpful. It's a very detailed walkthrough of all the ends that have to go into it. Yeah. Cool. So yeah, thanks very much for doing that on such short notice. That was very interesting, and thanks.
Thanks for the invite, guys. So it was good to be here.
Brilliant.
Thanks for listening to Unbillable Hours. If you want more, tune in next week. You know where to find us.